An 8-year-old boy saw 3 men planning something terrible. He ran to his mother and whispered what he'd heard. What happened next changed everything. But let's go back into the beginning. Marlo Brennan wasn't supposed to be counting coins at dawn. She stood behind the counter of her diner, The Junction, on the far edge of Bakersfield, where the highway met emptiness. Her hands moved through the register's cash drawer with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times. Quarters, dimes, nickels. The morning sun barely crept through the front windows, casting long shadows across the cracked vinyl booths and the coffee-stained counter that had seen better decades. $47. That's what remained after she'd paid Dalton Crane his weekly cut. $200 every Friday like clockwork for the past 2 years. Protection money, he called it. A tax for doing business in his territory. The kind of tax that didn't show up on any government form, but showed up in broken windows if you refused to pay. Marlo had refused once. Only once. The memory lived in the boarded-up window frame near the kitchen. She'd replaced the glass 3 times in the first month before she understood the message. Pay or watch everything you've built turn to rubble, piece by piece, window by window, until there's nothing left but splinters and regret. So she paid. She paid instead of fixing the stove that only worked on 2 burners. Paid instead of replacing the walk-in cooler that groaned like it might give up any day. Paid instead of buying Finn new shoes, the ones he needed, because his toes were starting to press against the front of the hand-me-downs she'd found at the church donation bin. Finn. Her son slept in the small room behind the kitchen. Not a bedroom, really. More like a storage space she'd converted with a second-hand mattress and sheets worn thin from washing. He slept there because the apartment above the diner, the one with actual bedrooms and a bathroom that didn't leak, cost $300 more a month than she could afford. Not after Dalton's cut, not after keeping the lights on and the gas flowing and the food supplies coming in from distributors who wanted payment up front because her credit was shot. Marlo closed the register drawer with a soft click. The diner was quiet, too quiet. It was Friday morning, 6:15, and she had 45 minutes before the early truckers would start filtering in for coffee and eggs. 45 minutes to pretend everything was fine. To pretend she wasn't drowning. To pretend that 8-year-old Finn wouldn't notice the way his mother's hands shook when certain men walked through the door. She heard him stirring in the back room, the creak of the old mattress, the soft shuffle of small feet on linoleum. Marlo straightened her shoulders, wiped her hands on her apron, and put on the smile she'd been practicing for 2 years. The smile that said, "Everything's okay, baby. Don't worry about your mom." Finn appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was small for 8, thin in a way that made Marlo's chest ache every time she looked at him. Dark hair sticking up on one side, wearing the same shirt he'd worn yesterday because laundry meant quarters for the machine at the laundromat 2 blocks away, and quarters were precious when you only had $47 to your name. "Morning, Mom." His voice was soft, careful, like he was afraid of disturbing something fragile. "Morning, sweetheart." Marlo crossed to him, knelt down, smoothed his hair. "You sleep okay?" Finn nodded, his eyes brown and too wise for his age, searched her face. He was looking for signs. Signs that today would be different from yesterday. Signs that the fear that lived in this diner like a permanent resident had finally moved out. "Can I have cereal?" Of course. Marlo stood moved to the small kitchen area. They didn't have a stock pantry like normal homes, just a shelf with the basics. She poured generic bran flakes into a bowl, added milk from the industrial fridge, set it on the counter. Finn climbed onto a stool, legs dangling. He ate slowly, methodically, like he was savoring it. Or like he'd learned that eating fast meant asking for seconds, and seconds meant running out of food before the next supply delivery. Marlo watched him, memorized him. This moment, this morning, and this quiet before the world demanded things from both of them. She didn't know that in less than 4 hours, her son would overhear 3 men plotting a kidnapping. She didn't know that by noon, she'd make a choice that would either save them or destroy them. She didn't know that the fear she'd been living with for 2 years was about to transform into something else entirely. Something that looked like courage. But that was still 4 hours away. For now, there was just a mother and son in a rundown diner eating cereal and pretending everything was fine. The bell above the door chimed at 7:30. Marlo looked up from wiping down tables. 3 men walked in. She recognized them immediately. Dalton Crane led the way, tall and lean in a leather jacket that tried too hard to look expensive. His eyes were sharp, calculating the kind that missed nothing. Behind him came Leon and Briggs, his usual crew. Leon was thick-shouldered and slow-moving, the kind of muscle that relied on size rather than speed. Briggs was wiry, twitchy, with a face that looked like it had taken too many punches. They didn't come on Fridays. Marlowe's collection day was Monday, had been for 2 years. Dalton showed up every Monday at noon, took his envelope, made small talk that felt like threats wrapped in politeness, and left. But here he was on Friday morning, and that meant something had changed. Marlowe felt her pulse quicken. She forced herself to keep moving, to finish wiping the table, to act normal. Normal meant safe. Normal meant they'd leave her alone. "Morning, Marlowe?" Dalton's voice was smooth, friendly even. That was the dangerous part. He never yelled, never threatened loudly, just spoke in that calm, measured tone that made every word feel like a promise of violence held in check. "Morning." Marlowe straightened, cloth in hand. "You're early this week." "Not here for collection." Dalton slid into the corner booth, the one with the best view of the door and the windows. Leon and Briggs flanked him, one on each side. "Just need a place to talk. That okay with you?" It wasn't a question. "Sure, coffee." "Black, 3 cups." Marlowe moved behind the counter, poured coffee into 3 mugs. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. 2 years of fear had taught her body how to function, even when her mind was screaming. She brought the mugs to their table, set them down, stepped back. "We'll be here a while," Dalton said, not looking at her. His eyes were on the window, watching the street. "Don't need anything else, just privacy." Marlowe nodded, retreated to the counter. Finn was still at his stool bowl, empty now, watching the 3 men with quiet eyes. He'd learned, same as his mother, that certain people required silence, required making yourself small and invisible until they forgot you existed. "Go to the back room, baby," Marlowe said softly. "You can watch cartoons on my phone." Finn slid off the stool without argument, took the phone she offered, disappeared into the back. Marlowe busied herself with prep work, chopping vegetables for the lunch rush that might or might not come, refilling napkin dispensers, checking stock. All the while, she was hyper-aware of the 3 men in the corner booth. They spoke in low voices, not quite whispers, but quiet enough that she couldn't make out words. Just the rumble of male voices discussing something they didn't want overheard. At 10:15, the morning rush came. 5 truckers, 2 regulars, who worked construction nearby, a woman passing through who needed directions and a bathroom. Marlowe served them all with practiced efficiency, smiled, made small talk, acted like everything was normal, while 3 men plotted in the corner and her 8-year-old son hid in the back room. By 10:20, the rush had cleared. The diner was empty except for Dalton's table. And that's when Finn emerged from the back room. Marlowe saw him before Dalton did. Finn walked toward her carrying her phone, but his eyes were fixed on the corner booth. His face was pale. Too pale. His hands clutched the phone like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. He stopped at the counter, standing on tiptoes to lean close to his mother. "Mom," his voice was barely a whisper. "I need to tell you something." Marlowe bent down, putting her ear near his mouth. "Those men," Finn whispered, his breath hot and quick with fear. "They're planning to hurt someone. They're going to trick him and put him in a van and take him away." Marlowe's blood went cold. "What did you hear?" she asked, keeping her voice low, her face neutral. "I wasn't spying." Finn's eyes were wide, pleading for her to believe him. "I was walking past to get water and I heard them. The man in the leather jacket, the leader, he said someone's coming at 11 to buy a motorcycle. But it's a trap. They're going to grab him and put him in a black van." Marlowe glanced at the corner booth. Dalton was still talking, gesturing with his hands. Leon and Briggs leaned in, listening. "Are you sure that's what you heard?" Finn nodded. "He said, we take him, we send a message to his whole club. Mom, I think they're going to kidnap someone." Marlowe's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to do what she'd done for 2 years. Stay quiet. Stay small. Don't get involved in Dalton Crane's business, because getting involved meant becoming a target. But this wasn't just business. This was conspiracy to commit a felony. Kidnapping. Possibly murder. And her son had heard it. If something happened, if this plan went through, and someone ended up dead or missing, and it came out that Finn had overheard, that Marlowe had known. She looked at her son, at his frightened face and his too thin frame and his hand-me-down shoes. She thought about the kind of person she wanted him to become, the kind of man she wanted him to grow into, and she thought about the kind of mother she was, the kind who paid protection money and kept her head down and taught her son that survival meant silence. Was that really who she wanted to be? Go back to the room, Marlo said quietly. Don't come out until I tell you. What are you going to do for the right thing? Finn's eyes widened. He knew. He knew that the right thing was also the dangerous thing, the thing that could get them both hurt. Mom, go, now. Finn went. Marlo straightened, took a breath, pulled out her phone from her apron pocket. Her hands shook as she opened the browser, typed in the search bar, Hells Angels Bakersfield. Because if Dalton was planning to kidnap someone from a club, there was only one club in Bakersfield that mattered. Only one group that had the kind of presence that would make Dalton Crane nervous enough to plan something this elaborate. The search results loaded. Hells Angels Bakersfield a chapter. Photos of men on motorcycles, leather vests with patches. A website that listed community events, toy drives for Christmas, veterans support groups, a fundraiser for a local family whose house had burned down. Not criminals, not the monsters she'd imagined, just men who rode motorcycles and apparently gave back to their community. Marlo scrolled through images, stopped on one, a group photo from a charity event 6 months ago. The Angels had donated bikes and helmets to underprivileged kids. Front and center stood a man with gray-streaked hair and a weathered face. The caption identified him as Gideon Cross, president of the Bakersfield chapter. Marlo looked up, checked the clock. 10:25. If Finn had heard correctly, someone from the Hells Angels was coming here at 11 o'clock thinking they were buying a motorcycle, walking straight into Dalton's trap. 35 minutes. Marlo moved to the utility closet, pulled out a notepad and pen. Her mind worked fast, calculating angles and consequences. If she warned the Angels, Dalton would know. He'd know someone in the diner had betrayed him. And there were only 2 people here who weren't part of his crew, her and Finn. He'd come for them. No question. But if she didn't warn them, if she let this happen, if someone died or disappeared because she stayed silent, she couldn't live with that. More than that, she couldn't teach Finn to live with that. Marlo wrote quickly, hands steady now, despite the fear coursing through her veins. Trap. They plan to grab you at 11 a.m. Black van outside. Get out now. She folded the note, slipped it into her apron pocket, walked to the back room. Finn looked up from the phone. Cartoon paused. I need you to listen very carefully, Marlo said, kneeling in front of him. In a little while, a man on a motorcycle is going to come into the diner. He's going to sit down with those 3 men. When I nod at you, I need you to walk over and give him this note. She pulled the folded paper from her pocket, placed it in Finn's small hand. Don't say anything. Just put it on the table in front of him and walk straight back here. Can you do that? Finn stared at the note. What if the bad men see? They will see. That's why you have to be fast. And that's why as soon as you give him the note, you come right back here and lock this door. Understand? Mom, what's going to happen? Marlo pulled him close, pressed her lips to the top of his head. I don't know, baby, but I know that doing nothing is worse than doing something. You were brave enough to tell me what you heard. Now we have to be brave enough to stop it. Are we going to be in trouble? Probably. Are you scared? Marlo pulled back, looked her son in the eyes. Yes, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what being brave means, not the absence of fear, just choosing to act when it matters most. Finn nodded slowly, clutched the note. When you nod, he repeated. Give the note, come straight back. Good boy. Marlo stood returned to the front of the diner. Dalton and his men were still talking, still planning, still assuming no one was paying attention, that no one would care enough or be stupid enough to interfere. Marlo moved behind the counter, positioned herself where she could see both the corner booth and the front door. And she waited. The rumble of a motorcycle cut through the morning air at 10:54. Deep, growling, unmistakable. Marlo's heart jumped into her throat. She looked out the window. A man swung off of black Harley boots, hitting the pavement with authority. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a leather vest with patches she couldn't make out from this distance, but didn't need to. The way he carried himself, the confidence in every movement told her everything. This was Gideon Cross, and he had no idea he was walking into an ambush. The bell chimed as he pushed open the door. Marlo forced herself to breathe normally, to look busy, To be invisible. Gideon's eyes swept the diner, landed on Dalton. Recognition flickered across his face. Not friendly, but acknowledgeable. Two men who knew of each other in the way that people who operated on different sides of the law often did. Dalton stood, smile plastered on his face, hand extended. "You must be the guy with the Harley." "That's me." Gideon's voice was calm, deep measured. He shook Dalton's hand and slid into the booth across from him. Marlowe's hands gripped the edge of the counter. This was it. The moment. Once she nodded at Finn, once that note was delivered, everything changed. No going back. She could still stop this. Could keep Finn in the back room. Could let this play out however it was going to play out and tell herself it wasn't her problem, wasn't her responsibility, wasn't worth risking everything she and Finn had. Except they didn't have anything. They had a failing diner and $47 and fear that lived in their bones. Was that really worth protecting? Dalton pulled out an envelope, set it on the table between them. 12,000, okay, count it if you want. Gideon didn't count it. He just looked at Dalton with eyes that had seen too much to trust easy smiles and too good offers. "You got the title transfer ready?" Gideon asked. "In my car," Dalton said smoothly. "Give me 2 minutes. I'll grab it, and we're done." He stood. This was the signal Finn had heard them planning. The moment Dalton walked out to his car, the moment he'd called the team waiting in the black van parked 2 blocks away. Marlowe's eyes found Finn, who had crept to the doorway of the back room, note clutched in his fist. Their eyes met. Marlowe nodded. Finn moved. Small, quick. 8 years old and terrified, but doing it anyway because his mother had asked him to, because he'd heard something terrible and couldn't let it happen. He crossed the diner in 4 steps that felt like slow motion to Marlowe. Every instinct screamed at her to grab him, pull him back, protect him from what was about to happen. But she didn't move. She watched her son walk up to the booth where a Hell's Angel sat waiting for a motorcycle title and a con man prepared to spring a trap. Finn stopped beside the table. Gideon looked down at him, surprised. Dalton, halfway to the door, turned. Finn placed the note on the table in front of Gideon. Didn't say a word. Just put it down and ran. Back across the diner into the backroom door, slamming shut behind him. Marlowe's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone in the room could hear it. Gideon picked up the note, unfolded it, read. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something sharp and dangerous and very, very aware. He looked up, not at Dalton, at Marlowe. Their eyes met across the diner. She didn't look away, didn't deny, just gave the smallest nod. Confirmation. Truth. Gideon's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed 3 words with quick, efficient movements. Marlowe couldn't see what he wrote, but she saw the immediate change in his posture. Saw him slide the envelope of cash into his jacket. Saw him stand smooth and controlled, like a man who just decided violence was an option he was prepared to take. Change of plans, Gideon said. Dalton stopped, hand on the door. What? I'm leaving. What are you talking about? I'm getting the title. No. Gideon moved toward the door, toward his Harley. You're not. Dalton's face shifted. The friendly mask dropped. What was underneath was cold and calculating. Where the hell do you think you're going? Gideon didn't answer. He pushed past Dalton out the door. Leon and Briggs started to move, started to follow, but they were too slow, too surprised. Gideon was already on his bike. The engine roared to life. And then, like thunder rolling in from all directions, the street filled with the sound of more engines. 6, 8, 10 motorcycles, all Hell's Angels rolling up from both ends of the block. They appeared like they'd been waiting, like they'd been ready, because Gideon had sent that text. 3 words that meant everything. Code red now. The bikes surrounded the diner, forming a wall of leather and chrome, and men who'd just been told their president was in danger. Dalton stood frozen in the doorway, face gone white. Leon and Briggs scrambled, trying to get to their car, but the bikes blocked them in. A woman swung off one of the motorcycles, shorter than the men, but carrying herself with the kind of authority that made size irrelevant. She had a scar running from her left eye to her jaw. Not hidden, worn like a badge. This was Sutton Wade. She walked straight up to Dalton, stopped inches from his face. You got something to say. Her voice was quiet, deadly. Dalton stammered. This is a misunderstanding. Yeah, Sutton interrupted. It is. You misunderstood who you were dealing with. Gideon killed his engine. walked back toward the diner. But he didn't go to Dalton. He went to the window, looked through the glass. Marlowe stood behind the counter, every muscle locked, waiting for the world to explode. Their eyes met again. Gideon gave a single nod. Thank you. Then he turned to Dalton. You want to explain what you were planning? Or should I call the sheriff and let you explain it to him? Dalton looked around. 10 Hell's Angels, his 2 men trapped. No black van coming to his rescue because whoever was in that van had seen the bikes and driven away fast. He was outnumbered and outgunned, and everyone knew it. It was just business, Dalton said, trying for casual and landing on desperate. Nothing personal. Kidnapping's pretty personal, Gideon said. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Gideon stepped closer. Because someone in that diner heard every word you said. Heard you planning to grab me, throw me in a van, use me as leverage against the club. Dalton's eyes flicked to the diner. To Marlowe. She saw the recognition. Saw him understand. We're leaving, Dalton said to Leon and Briggs. Now. The angels parted, let them get to their car. Let them drive away. Because this wasn't about violence, it was about sending a message. You don't mess with people we protect. When the car was gone, the angels mounted their bikes. Engines roared to life one by one. They rode off in formation, leaving nothing but the smell of exhaust and the echo of power. All except Gideon. He turned and walked into the diner. The bell chimed. Marlowe stood frozen behind the counter. Gideon stopped in front of her, looked at her with eyes that had seen violence and survived it. You warned me. Not a question. Yes. Why? Marlowe's throat was tight. My son heard them planning. I couldn't let it happen. You know who those men were, what they'll do when they figure out it was you, yes. And you warned me anyway. Marlowe nodded. Gideon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, what is your name? Marlowe. Marlowe Brennan. You got guts, Marlowe Brennan. He pulled a card from his pocket, set it on the counter. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Hell's Angels Bakersfield chapter. A phone number. They'll come back, Gideon said quietly. Dalton Crane doesn't forget when someone costs him, and you just cost him big. Marlowe's hand started to shake. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving cold reality in its place. I know. When they do come back, you call me. Understand? Marlowe picked up the card. Why would you help me? Because you helped me. Gideon's voice was firm, certain. Because you saw something wrong and you stopped it, even though it put you at risk. That matters. He headed toward the door, paused, looked back. Where's your son? In the back room. What's his name? Finn. Tell Finn he's got more courage than most men I know. Tell him he did good, real good. Then Gideon walked out, mounted his Harley, and rode away. Marlowe stood in the empty diner, card in hand, heart still racing. Finn emerged from the back room, pale and shaking. Are we in trouble? Marlowe pulled him close, held him tight. I don't know, baby. But whatever happens, we did the right thing. She didn't know that by tomorrow morning, everything she feared would come knocking. She didn't know that Dalton Crane was already planning his retaliation. She didn't know that the card in her hand would become the most important thing she owned. All she knew was that for the first time in 2 years, she'd stood up. And standing up felt better than cowering ever had. The rest of the day passed in a haze of normal operations, mixed with electric fear. Marlowe served the lunch rush. Burgers and fries and coffee refills. Smiled at customers who had no idea that hours earlier this diner had been the center of a standoff between a protection racket and a motorcycle club. Finn stayed in the back room, drew pictures, watched cartoons, didn't talk about what he'd done or what he'd seen. At 6 o'clock, Marlowe flipped the sign to closed, locked the door, counted the till, $183. A decent Friday. She put $150 in the safe for Monday's bills, $33 in her pocket for groceries. Then she waited, because Gideon had said Dalton would come back, and Marlowe believed him. The knock came at 6:45 that evening, not on the front door. On the back entrance, the one that led to the alley behind the diner. 3 sharp raps. Marlowe's blood went cold. She looked at Finn, who was eating leftover mac and cheese at the counter. Go to the back room, lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Mom. Now Finn. He went. Marlowe waited until she heard the lock click. Then she walked to the back door. looked through the small window. Gideon Cross stood in the alley still wearing his leather vest, hands visible and empty. Marlowe unlocked the door, opened it a crack. "Mr. Cross?" "Call me Gideon." He glanced past her into the diner. "Can I come in?" Marlowe hesitated, then stepped aside. Gideon entered, and with him came a woman, the one with the scar. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she could handle herself in any situation. "This is Sutton Wade," Gideon said, "my VP, second in command of the chapter." Sutton nodded at Marlowe. "You're the one who sent the warning." "Yes." "That was either very brave or very stupid," Sutton said. "Not unkindly, just matter of fact." "Probably both," Marlowe admitted. Gideon looked around the diner, taking in the worn booths, the outdated equipment, the signs of a business barely surviving. "How long has Dalton been collecting from you?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. 2 years. "How much? 200 a week?" Gideon's expression darkened. 20,000 over 2 years. For what? Protection. The word tasted bitter. Protection from what? From him. Marlowe's voice was flat. "I refused to pay once when he first approached me. Next morning, my front window was shattered. Next week, my distributor got a call telling them I was a credit risk. Week after that, someone slashed my tires in the parking lot." Sutton muttered something under her breath that sounded like a curse. "So you paid," Gideon said. "I paid because I have a son, because I can't afford to keep replacing windows and tires and lost business, because fighting back meant losing everything. Until today." Marlowe met his eyes. "Until today." Gideon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dalton's going to retaliate, you know that." "I know. He'll want to make an example of you. Show everyone what happens when you cross him." "I know." "Then why did you do it?" Marlowe's throat tightened. "Because my son was watching. Because I'm tired of teaching him that the world belongs to men like Dalton Crane. Because someone had to do something and I was the only one there." She paused, then added quietly, "And because you all run toy drives for kids and support veterans and give back to the community, and I couldn't let Dalton hurt someone who actually tries to make things better." Sutton and Gideon exchanged a glance. "You researched us," Sutton said. "I had 10 minutes and a smartphone. I wasn't going to send my son into a situation blind." "Smart," Gideon said. "That's good, you're thinking tactically." "I'm thinking like a mother trying to keep her kid alive." "Same thing in this case." Gideon pulled out a chair, sat without asking. Sutton did the same. "We need to talk about what happens next." Marlowe remained standing and arms crossed. "I'm listening." "Dalton's probably planning his move right now," Gideon said. "Could come tonight, could come tomorrow, could wait a week, but he'll come, and when he does, you need to be ready." "Ready how? I'm a single mother running a diner. I can't fight Dalton Crane." "No," Sutton said, "but we can teach you how to protect yourself until we can get there." Marlowe stared at her. "You want to teach me to fight?" "I want to teach you to survive," Sutton corrected. "Fighting's one part of it, but there's also awareness, planning, knowing your exits, knowing how to de-escalate, knowing when to run and when to stand your ground." "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved Gideon's life," Sutton said simply. "That matters to us. We protect people who protect us." Gideon leaned forward. "Here's what I'm offering. We teach you some basics tonight. Awareness, defense, what to look for. Then we make sure Dalton knows you're under our protection. That touching you means going through us. And if that doesn't stop him, then we deal with it when it happens. But we deal with it together." Marlowe felt something crack in her chest. She'd been alone for so long. Alone raising Finn, alone running the diner, alone paying Dalton's extortion, alone in her fear. The idea of not being alone felt dangerous, like hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing of all. "I don't understand why you're helping me," she said quietly. Gideon stood. "Most people see danger and look away. You saw it and ran toward it. You put your kid at risk to warn a stranger. That's not common, that's rare. And people like you shouldn't have to face men like Dalton alone." He paused, then added, "Plus we don't like him much either. He's been pushing into territory that doesn't belong to him. This gives us a reason to push back. So I'm useful." "You're brave," Gideon corrected. "There's a difference." Marlowe looked at Sutton, then back at Gideon. "What exactly are you proposing in 1 hour tonight?" Sutton said. "I teach you basics. Gideon talks to your son, explains what's happening in a way an 8-year-old can understand. Tomorrow we make our presence known. Dalton gets the message that you're connected now. And in exchange, no exchange, Gideon said. You already paid. You saved my life. This is us returning the favor. Marlo wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't need charity, didn't need saving, didn't need protection from a motorcycle club. But that would be a lie. She needed all of it. Okay, she said. 1 hour. Sutton smiled. It transformed her face, made the scars seem less like damage and more like decoration. Good. Go get your son. He should hear this too. Marlo walked to the back room, knocked. Finn, it's safe. Come out. The lock clicked. Finn emerged, eyes wide, when he saw the two strangers in his diner. It's okay, Marlo said. These are friends. Remember the man from this morning? The one on the motorcycle? Finn nodded. Gideon crouched down to Finn's level. Hey, kid, what's your name? Finn, he whispered. I'm Gideon. You did something really brave this morning. Finn, you saved my life. Finn's eyes got wider. I did. Yeah, those men were planning to hurt me. You and your mom stopped them. That took guts. Are the bad men going to come back? Gideon didn't lie to him. Probably, but your mom and I are going to make sure you're both safe, okay? Okay. I need you to do something for me, Gideon said. I need you to be brave one more time. Can you do that? Finn looked at his mother. Marlo nodded. I can try, Finn said. That's all anyone can ask. Gideon stood. Your mom's going to learn some things from my friend Sutton. I'm going to sit with you and explain what's happening. And then we're all going to make sure tomorrow is better than today. Sound good? Finn nodded slowly. Sutton gestured to Marlo. Let's use the dining area. Give you some space to move. They walked to the center of the diner. Sutton moved a table aside, creating an open area. First thing you need to understand, Sutton said, is that self-defense isn't about winning fights. It's about creating opportunities to escape. You're not trying to beat Dalton in hand-to-hand combat. You're trying to buy yourself time to run to call for help to survive. Okay. Second thing, awareness is your best weapon. Most attacks succeed because the victim is surprised. We're going to take surprise off the table. For the next hour, Sutton taught Marlo things she'd never thought she'd need to know. How to scan a room when you enter. How to identify exits. How to position yourself so your back isn't to the door. How to read body language. How to de-escalate with words. And when words failed, how to strike fast and hard at vulnerable points. Eyes, throat, groin, knees. Not pretty, not martial arts. Just practical violence designed to create space between you and danger. Marlo practiced. Her movements were awkward at first, unpracticed. But Sutton was patient. Again, faster this time. Don't think, just move. Marlo moved. Good. Again and again and again, until her muscles remembered even when her mind froze. That's enough for tonight, Sutton said finally. You're not going to master this in an hour, but you've got the basics. Practice them every day until they're instinct. Marlo's hands were shaking, not from fear this time, from exertion, from adrenaline, from the strange, unfamiliar feeling of having done something to prepare instead of just waiting to be victimized. Across the diner, Gideon sat with Finn. They were looking at something on Gideon's phone. Finn actually smiled at something the big biker said. Sutton saw Marlo watching. He's good with kids. Most people don't expect that. I didn't expect any of this. Life's funny that way. Sutton grabbed her jacket. We'll be back tomorrow, early, before your breakfast rush. We're going to make it very clear that this diner is under angel protection now. What if Dalton doesn't care? Then he's stupider than I thought. Sutton headed for the door, paused. You did good today, Marlo. Most people wouldn't have. Remember that when things get hard. Gideon joined them, gave Finn a fist bump, turned to Marlo. Lock the doors tonight, all of them, windows too. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call that number on the card. Don't hesitate. Don't second guess. Just call. I will. And Marlo gets some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. They left through the back door. Marlo locked it behind them, stood in the quiet diner with her son. Mom. Finn's voice was small. Are we going to be okay? Marlo knelt down, pulled him close. I don't know, baby, but I know we're not alone anymore. And that's something. She fed Finn dinner, tucked him into bed, sat in the dark diner with all the doors locked, and all the windows secured, one hand on her phone, the other on Gideon's card. Waiting, because Dalton Crane was out there somewhere planning his retaliation. And tomorrow when he came, Marlo would be ready. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she learned that fear didn't have to mean paralysis. It could mean preparation. It could mean choosing action over surrender. And for the first time in her life, Marlo Brennan was choosing to fight. The crash came at 2 a.m. on Saturday. Not a knock this time. The sound of glass shattering jolted Marlo from a half-sleep she'd fallen into on the couch, still dressed, phone clutched in her hand. For a split second, her mind struggled to process the sound. Then instinct took over. She rolled off the couch, hit the floor, scrambled toward the back room where Finn slept. Another crash. More glass. The sound of something heavy hitting the diner floor. Marlo burst into the back room, grabbed Finn, who was sitting up wide-eyed and terrified. "Mom, shh, we're leaving now." She didn't grab clothes, didn't grab anything except her son and her phone. Just ran to the back door, the one that opened onto the alley, fumbled with the lock with shaking hands. Got it open. Cold night air hit her face. She pulled Finn through, closed the door as quietly as she could, looked both ways down the alley. Empty. Whoever had thrown whatever through her windows was long gone. Hit and run, message delivered. Marlo's heart hammered. Think, don't panic. Think, the neighbor. Mr. Patterson, 2 buildings down. Ran a 24-hour laundromat. He'd helped her once before when the diner's pipes burst. Good man. Kind. She grabbed Finn's hand, ran down the alley in bare feet, glass cutting into her soles, but adrenaline numbing the pain. Reached the laundromat's back entrance. Pounded on the door. "Mr. Patterson, it's Marlo Brennan, please." A light came on inside. Shuffling footsteps. The door cracked open, chain still attached. Patterson's weathered face appeared. 70 if he was a day, but sharp-eyed and alert. "Marlo, what in the... Someone just attacked my diner, broke my windows. I need to borrow your phone, please." Patterson's eyes went to Finn, barefoot and shaking in his pajamas, then to Marlo's bleeding feet. He unlatched the chain, pulled them inside. "You hurt?" "No, just scared. Can I use your phone?" Patterson handed her an old cordless landline. "You calling the police?" "Not yet." Marlo's fingers found Gideon's card in her pocket, somehow still there. She dialed the number. It rang once. "Gideon?" His voice was alert, awake, like he'd been expecting this. "It's Marlo Brennan. Someone just threw something through my diner windows. I got Finn out. We're safe, but I need..." Where are you?" "Patterson's laundromat, 2 buildings east of the diner." "Stay there, lock the doors. I'm 10 minutes away." The line went dead. Marlo handed the phone back to Patterson. "Thank you. I'm sorry to..." "Don't apologize." Patterson was already moving, grabbing a first aid kit from under the counter. "Sit, let me look at those feet." Marlo sat, let the old man clean the cuts, apply bandages, all while Finn pressed against her side, silent and trembling. "This about Dalton Crane?" Patterson asked quietly. Marlo's head snapped up. "You know about him?" "Everyone knows about him. Most people just don't talk about it." Patterson taped the last bandage, sat back. "You stand up to him." "I did something he didn't like." Patterson nodded slowly. "Been waiting for someone to do that. Took guts." Guts or stupidity? Sometimes those are the same thing. Patterson stood, walked to his office, came back with an old Polaroid camera. "Come on. What? You're going back there to see the damage, right? When that biker friend of yours gets here, I suppose. Then you're going to want pictures. Evidence for police, for insurance, for whatever comes next." He pressed the camera into her hands. "Document everything. Date and timestamp if you can. Make copies." Marlo stared at the camera, then at Patterson. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Dalton Crane's been bleeding this neighborhood dry for 3 years, and nobody's had the spine to fight back. You fight back, you deserve support." He glanced at Finn. "And because you got a kid counting on you. That matters." The rumble of motorcycles filled the street outside. Not one, not two. 6 bikes pulling up to the laundromat, engines cutting off in sequence. Marlo stood moved to the door. Through the glass, she saw Gideon dismounting Sutton beside him. 4 other angels spread out, checking the street, the alley, the surroundings. She unlocked the door. Gideon took one look at her bare feet, the bandages, Finn's pale face, and his expression went hard. You're both okay? Yes. Show me. Marlowe led them back down the alley to the diner. Patterson followed, camera in hand. The back door hung open where she'd fled through it. Gideon entered firsthand, raised to signal the others to wait. Clear, he called. Marlowe stepped inside. The diner looked like a war zone. Both front windows shattered glass covering the floor like deadly snow. Tables overturned, chairs broken, and in the middle of the wreckage a brick. Sutton picked it up carefully using a napkin. Wrapped around it with a rubber band was a piece of paper. She unfolded it, read aloud. You should have left. Marlowe's hands clenched into fists. Not from fear this time, from anger. This was her home, hers and Finn's, the only thing they had, and Dalton had violated it because she dared to defy him. I want pictures, she said quietly, of everything. Patterson stepped forward, started snapping photos. The windows, the brick, the note, the overturned furniture. Each photo came out with a mechanical whir, developing slowly in the dim light. Gideon watched Marlowe's face. What are you thinking? I'm thinking evidence first, revenge never. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval maybe, or respect. Smart. What else? I'm thinking I need to check outside. Whoever did this came in a vehicle. Maybe they left something, tire tracks, cigarette butts, something. Even smarter, Gideon turned to two of the angels. One was older, gray-bearded, with tattoos covering both arms. Hank checked the perimeter. Look for anything that doesn't belong. The man nodded and headed out. Marlowe moved carefully through the broken glass, bare feet now protected by Patterson's bandages. She surveyed the damage with a detached part of her brain, the part that was already calculating costs. 2 windows, at least 1,000 to replace. The tables and chairs, another few hundred. The lost business while repairs happened, more than she could afford. But that wasn't the point right now. The point was documentation. She picked up her phone, started taking photos, different angles, close-ups of the brick, the note, the pattern of glass spread across the floor. Mom, Finn's voice was small from the doorway, where Sutton had stationed him, keeping him away from the glass. Is our home gone? Marlowe looked at her son, at his frightened face and his too thin frame and his bare feet matching hers. No, baby, our home is still here, just damaged. Damage can be repaired. But we don't have money to fix it. 8 years old and he knew. He'd always known. Kids always knew when their parents were drowning. We'll figure it out, Marlowe said with more confidence than she felt. Hank called from outside. Got something. They filed out. Hank stood in the alley behind a dumpster pointing at the ground. Cigarette butts. 3 of them. Same brand, still warm, and, in the dirt tire tracks, fresh. Deep treads from a heavy vehicle. They waited here, Hank said. Watched until the lights went out. Smoked while they waited, then threw the bricks and ran. Bricks plural, Gideon asked. 2 broken windows. Probably 2 bricks. Hank pointed to the tracks. Van maybe, or SUV, something big. Patterson took photos of everything, the cigarettes, the tracks, the position relative to the broken windows. Sutton pulled out her phone, started making calls. I'm getting someone down here to board up the windows before sunrise. Can't leave this exposed. Marlowe wanted to say she couldn't afford it, wanted to say she'd handle it herself, but the words stuck in her throat because she couldn't handle it herself and they both knew it. Thank you, she said instead. Sutton just nodded. Gideon crouched next to the tire tracks studying them. We could track this, find out who Dalton sent. No, Marlowe's voice was firm. Everyone looked at her. We're not tracking anyone. We're not retaliating. We're taking this to the police. The police haven't helped you before, Gideon pointed out, because I never gave them evidence before. Now I have photos, timestamps. The brick with a written threat, witness accounts. This isn't he said, she said anymore. This is vandalism and terroristic threats documented. Dalton owns cops in this town, Sutton said not unkindly, just stating facts. Maybe, but he doesn't own all of them. Marlowe straightened, looked at Gideon. You said awareness is a weapon. Documentation is too. I'm building a case, brick by brick, if I have to. Gideon studied her face. Then he smiled. Small but genuine. You're thinking like a survivor. I'm thinking like a mother who's done being a victim. The sun came up over Bakersfield at 6:15 on Sunday morning. Marlo stood outside her diner, arms crossed, watching two angels nail plywood sheets over the broken windows. Temporary, ugly, but functional. Finn sat inside with Hank eating cereal the old biker had somehow procured from somewhere. The two of them played a game with sugar packets, building towers and knocking them down. Normal things, small mercies. Gideon approached carrying 2 cups of coffee from the gas station down the street. You sleep at all? No. Marlo accepted the coffee, sipped. Too hot, too bitter, perfect. You tell. No. They stood in silence watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful if you could ignore the plywood and broken glass and fear. What's your next move? Gideon asked. Police station opens at 8 on Sundays. Reduced hours, but there's always someone on duty. I'm going to file a report, show them the photos, demand they investigate. And if they don't, then I escalate city council, local news, social media. I'll make enough noise that they can't ignore me. That'll make you a target. I'm already a target. Marlo turned to face him. The question isn't whether Dalton's coming for me. It's whether I'm going to meet him standing up or cowering down. Gideon nodded slowly. You want company at the police station? No, having a Hell's Angel walk in with me sends the wrong message. Makes it look like I'm trying to intimidate them. You're trying to intimidate them. No, I'm trying to get justice. There's a difference, Gideon smiled again. That same small smile that said he approved even if he didn't fully agree. What do you need from me then? Marlo thought about it. Keep Finn safe while I'm gone. And when I get back, I need you to teach me more. More what? More everything. You taught me basics last night. I need advanced. I need to be ready for when Dalton escalates. He's going to escalate. I know. That's why I need to be ready. At 8:15, Marlo walked into the Bakersfield Police Department with a folder full of Polaroids, a brick wrapped in a plastic bag, and a note that threatened arson and murder. The officer at the desk looked up, young, maybe 25, bored expression that said Sundays in Bakersfield didn't usually involve much excitement. Help you. I need to file a report. Vandalism and terroristic threats. The officer's expression didn't change. Fill out this form. We'll get to it. He slid a clipboard across the desk. Marlo didn't take it. I need to speak to a detective now. Ma'am, it's Sunday. Detectives don't work Sundays unless it's an emergency. Someone threw bricks through my windows at 2 this morning with a note threatening to burn down my business with my 8-year-old son inside. That's an emergency. The officer's demeanor shifted, slightly. Do you know who did it? I know who ordered it, Dalton Crane. The name landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of recognition crossed the officer's face. That's a serious accusation. I have serious evidence. Marlo set the folder on the desk. Photos, timeline, the brick, the note. This is the second crime he's committed against me in 3 days, and I want it on record before he escalates to actual violence. The officer hesitated, picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it. 2 minutes later, a woman emerged from the back, 40-something dark hair pulled back, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans and a blazer with a detective's badge clipped to her belt. I'm Detective Iris Holloway. You have evidence against Dalton Crane. I do. Come with me. Marlo followed her into an interview room, small, windowless, a table and 3 chairs. Holloway sat, gestured for Marlo to do the same. I was off duty, got called in because you used Crane's name. That name gets attention around here. I'm starting to understand that. Talk to me, from the beginning. Marlo talked. She told Holloway everything. 2 years of extortion, the refused payment, and the consequences. Dalton's visit on Friday with plans to kidnap Gideon Cross, the warning she'd given, the 24-hour ultimatum, the brick through her window. She laid out the photos, the note, the brick. Holloway examined each piece of evidence carefully. Her expression gave nothing away. When Marlo finished, Holloway leaned back. You understand what you're accusing him of. Extortion is a felony. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping is federal. These are serious charges. I understand. And you're willing to testify, go on record. Put your name on a statement. Yes. Holloway was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We've been watching Dalton Crane for 18 months, building a case, but he's careful. Never leaves evidence. Never makes mistakes. Victims are too scared to come forward." "I'm not too scared. You should be." Holloway's voice was gentle but firm. "Crane doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. If you do this, if you officially accuse him, there's no taking it back. He'll come at you with everything he has. He's already coming at me. At least this way I'm fighting back." Holloway studied Marlowe's face, looking for doubt maybe, or desperation, or the kind of instability that made for unreliable witnesses. Whatever she saw, it must have satisfied her. "Okay, I'm going to take your statement. I'm going to log this evidence, and I'm going to reach out to a contact I have with the FBI. FBI. Extortion across multiple victims, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, possible racketeering. This is bigger than local police can handle." Holloway pulled out a notepad. "But I need you to understand something. Federal cases take time. Months, sometimes years. In the meantime, Dalton will still be out there." "I know. Can you handle that? Living under that threat while we build the case?" Marlowe thought about Finn, about the diner, about 2 years of paying protection money and swallowing fear and teaching her son that the world belonged to men like Dalton Crane. "I can handle it, because the alternative is living under that threat forever without fighting back." Holloway nodded slowly. "Then let's get your statement on record." They spent the next 2 hours going through everything in excruciating detail. Times, dates, amounts, names, conversations. Every interaction Marlowe could remember with Dalton over 2 years. By the time they finished, Marlowe's hand cramped from signing forms, and her throat was dry from talking. Holloway walked her out. "I'll be in touch. Within a week, probably sooner. In the meantime, document everything. If Crane or any of his people contact you, record it if you can. Photos, audio, video. Everything is evidence." "I will." "And Marlowe," Holloway's voice dropped, "watch Amora back. I meant what I said. Crane's dangerous. Don't take chances." "I'm not taking chances. I'm making choices. There's a difference. Chances are random. Choices are deliberate." Marlowe met her eyes. "I'm choosing to fight. That's deliberate." Holloway almost smiled. "Call me if anything happens. Anything at all." Marlowe walked out of the police station into bright Sunday morning sunshine, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. But hope nonetheless. The call came Monday morning at 10:30. Marlowe was in the diner, sweeping glass into a pile when her phone rang. "Unknown number." She answered warily. "Hello. Marlowe Brennan, this is Special Agent Vance with the FBI. Detective Holloway passed along your information regarding Dalton Crane." Marlowe's heart skipped. "Yes. I'd like to meet with you. Today if possible. We have a proposition." "What kind of proposition?" "The kind we discuss in person. Can you come to the Federal Building downtown?" "Say 1 o'clock. Marlowe looked at the plywood windows, the broken furniture, Finn coloring quietly in a booth, while Sutton kept watch. "I'll be there." At 12:45, Marlowe walked into the Federal Building in downtown Bakersfield. Gideon had insisted on driving her, though he waited in the parking lot rather than coming inside. "Federal agents get twitchy around bikers," he'd said. "Better I stay out of sight." Agent Vance met her in the lobby. Tall, black, maybe 50, with the kind of calm authority that came from years of dealing with dangerous people. He led her to a conference room. No windows, a table with recording equipment, and Detective Holloway already seated. "Ms. Brennan, thank you for coming." Vance gestured to a chair. "Detective Holloway's been filling me in on your situation. I'm sorry for what you've been dealing with." "Thank you. I'm going to be direct. We've had Dalton Crane on our radar for 2 years. Suspected racketeering, extortion conspiracy. But we haven't been able to make charges stick because victims won't testify." "I'll testify." "I believe you, but testimony alone might not be enough. Crane's lawyers are good. They'll attack your credibility. Single mother struggling business, possible grudge against their client." Marlowe's jaw tightened. "So what do you need?" Vance leaned forward. "We need him on tape, admitting to the extortion, preferably making new threats. Something a jury can hear with their own ears." "You want me to wear a wire?" "Yes." The room went very quiet. Holloway spoke up. It's dangerous. We won't lie to you about that. If Crane suspects, if he searches you, if anything goes wrong, I'll do it. Both agents stared at her. You haven't heard the details, Vance said. I don't need details. You need evidence. I can get you evidence. When Wednesday, we'll have time to prep. You go over scenarios, make sure you're ready. No, tomorrow. Marlowe's voice was steady. Dalton's going to come back. Probably soon. Better we control when and where it happens than wait for him to surprise me again. Vance exchanged a glance with Holloway. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. We'll need to move fast then. Get the wire, brief you on procedure, set up surveillance. How does it work? You call Dalton, tell him you want to talk. Meet him somewhere public, somewhere we can monitor. Your diner would be ideal. We put cameras across the street, agents and vehicles nearby. You wear the wire. You get him talking. What if he doesn't come? Then we try again. But my guess is he'll come. Men like Crane can't resist when they think they've won. He'll want to gloat, to threaten, to make sure you know your place. Marlowe's hands clenched into fists under the table. And if he gets violent, we'll have agents close, very close. At the first sign of physical threat, we move in. How close? 30 seconds away. 30 seconds could be a long time when someone was hurting you. But 30 seconds was better than the 2 years she'd spent with no one coming at all. Okay, tomorrow, what do I need to do? They spent the next 3 hours prepping her. How to activate the wire. How to guide conversation toward incriminating statements. How to stay calm if Dalton got aggressive. What phrases would signal agents to move in? How to survive. By 4 o'clock, Marlowe's head spun with information and her hands shook with adrenaline. But she didn't back out. Vance walked her to the lobby. You're incredibly brave, Ms. Brennan. I'm incredibly tired of being afraid. That's often the same thing. He handed her a card. My direct line. You call if you change your mind, if you have questions, if anything happens before tomorrow. I won't change my mind. I didn't think you would. Gideon was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his bike. He straightened when he saw her face. What happened? Get on. I'll tell you while we ride. They drove back to the diner, wind whipping past, engine roaring beneath them. Marlowe held on to Gideon's waist and felt for just a moment like she was flying instead of falling. When they pulled up outside the diner, Sutton was waiting. We need to talk, Marlowe said. All of us. Inside, Finn was still coloring. Hank sat with him, teaching him how to draw motorcycles. Marlowe pulled Gideon and Sutton aside. FBI wants me to wear a wire, meet with Dalton tomorrow, get him to confess on tape. Sutton swore quietly. That's dangerous as hell. I know. You're really going to do it. Yes. Gideon was quiet, his face unreadable. Say something, Marlowe said. I think you're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Can I be both? You can, but bravery without backup, Bob, is suicide, Deanna. He looked at Sutton. We'll be there, close. Closer than the feds. They said not to involve civilians. We're not civilians. We're family. And family protects family. Marlowe felt her throat tighten. I'm not family. You barely know me. You saved my life. That makes you family. And your son showed courage most grown men don't have. That makes him family too. Gideon's voice was firm. We'll be there tomorrow. You won't be alone. The FBI will be there. 30 seconds away, Sutton said. I heard you tell Hank. 30 seconds is a long time. And you'll be faster. We'll be in the diner, undercover as customers. Something goes wrong, we're right there. Marlowe wanted to argue, wanted to say this was her fight, her risk, her choice. But the truth was she was terrified. And having people she trusted nearby made the terror just slightly more bearable. Okay, but you follow the FBI's lead, no cowboy stuff. We do this by the book. Sutton grinned. Since when do we look like cowboys? You know what I mean? Yeah, we do. Sutton's expression turned serious. You're calling the shots, Marlowe. We're just backup. But we're damn good backup. That night, Marlowe couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch in the dark diner, listening to Finn breathe in the back room, going over every scenario in her head. What if Dalton didn't show? What if he did show but didn't say anything incriminating? What if he suspected the wire? What if agents were too far away? What if everything went wrong? At 2 in the morning, Gideon knocked on the back door. Marlo let him in. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. No. Want to talk about it? Not really. Want to learn more defense moves, despite everything. Marlo smiled. Yeah, that would help. They spent an hour in the dark diner, Gideon teaching her more advanced techniques. How to break a grab, how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to target pressure points. You're a natural, he said as she successfully executed a wrist release for the third time. I'm desperate. That's different. Desperation and natural talent aren't mutually exclusive. He stepped back, grabbed water from the mini fridge behind the counter. You ready for tomorrow? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what real strength looks like. Or stupidity. Like I said, often the same thing. Gideon sat on a stool, looked at her across the counter. You know what's going to happen after this, Wad? If you get Dalton on tape, if he goes to prison, if you take him down, I'll be safe. You'll be a target, not from Dalton, from everyone who works for him and everyone who loses income when he goes away. Everyone who blames you for disrupting their operation. Marlo's stomach clenched. She hadn't thought that far ahead. I can't worry about that now. I'm not saying worry, I'm saying prepare. This doesn't end tomorrow, it starts tomorrow. Then I'll deal with what comes after when it comes. We'll deal with it, Gideon corrected. You're not alone in this. Why do you keep saying that? Why do you care? Gideon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when I was 19, I was homeless, sleeping under overpasses, stealing food. No one gave a damn. Then one day a man stopped, gave me a job, a place to stay, told me I mattered. He paused. That man was the president of the Hells Angels. He's gone now, but what he taught me isn't. You help people who help you. You protect people who can't protect themselves. That's the code. I'm not helpless. No, you're not. But you were alone, and nobody should have to fight men like Dalton Crane alone. Marlo felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back. Thank you for everything. Thank me when this is over and you're still standing. Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock, Marlo called Dalton Crane. Her hands shook as she dialed the number she'd memorized 2 years ago, the one she called every Monday to confirm his collection time. It rang 3 times. Marlo, Dalton's voice was smooth, pleased. I've been expecting your call. We need to talk. I agree, your place or mine. My diner, noon. Bold, I like that, noon it is. He hung up. Marlo set the phone down, looked at Agent Vance and Detective Holloway, who'd arrived an hour earlier to wire her up. He's coming. Good. Vance adjusted the small microphone taped between her shoulder blades hidden under her shirt. Remember, keep him talking. Ask open-ended questions. Let him brag. Men like Crane love to hear themselves talk. And if he gets violent, you say, I need some air. Almer, that's the signal. We come in immediately. Marlo nodded. Her mouth was dry. Holloway squeezed her shoulder. You can do this. I know. And if you can't, if it gets too much, you bail. No shame in that. There's shame in living scared for the rest of my life. Then don't be scared. Be smart. At 11:30, Gideon, Sutton, and Hank entered the diner as planned. They sat at separate booths, ordered coffee, looked like regular customers. Finn was with Patterson. Safe, away from whatever was about to happen. At 11:55, Marlo stood behind the counter, hands steady on the coffee pot, heart hammering against her ribs. The wire felt like it was burning against her skin, even though she knew that was impossible. At noon exactly, a black sedan pulled up outside. Dalton Crane stepped out. Alone this time, confident. He pushed open the door. The bell chimed. Marlo, he smiled, that same predatory smile she'd seen 100 times. You wanted to talk. I'm listening. Marlo set down the coffee pot, met his eyes. I wanted to talk about us coming to an understanding. An understanding? Dalton slid into a booth, the same one Gideon had sat in 3 days ago. I like the sound of that. What kind of understanding? The kind where I don't end up with bricks through my window cigars. That was unfortunate. Accidents happen. That wasn't an accident. That was a message. Was it? Dalton leaned back casual. What message do you think it sent? This was it, the moment. Get him talking. That I made a mistake, warning that biker, costing you money. You did cost me money, quite a bit actually. That deal was worth 50,000 to me. 50,000 to kidnap someone, 50,000 to send a message, to show the Hell's Angels that they don't run this town. Dalton's voice was pleasant, conversational, like he was discussing the weather. See, they've been moving into territory that belongs to me, taking over businesses I've been protecting for years. I needed to remind them who's in charge. By kidnapping their president, by taking something valuable and making them pay to get it back. Business, Marlowe, just business. And throwing bricks through my window, that business too. That was a reminder. You work for me, you pay me. That means you do what I say. And what I said was leave town. I can't leave town. This diner is all I have. Had, past tense. Dalton leaned forward, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to sell this place for whatever you can get, probably pennies on the dollar because word's gotten around that you're a liability, and then you're going to take your kid and disappear. And if I don't, then the brick was just the beginning. Next time it won't be an empty diner. Next time you and your boy will be inside when it burns. Marlowe's blood went cold. You're threatening to burn down my diner with my son inside. I'm not threatening, I'm promising. You crossed me, Marlowe. Made me look weak in front of people I need to respect me. That can't stand. So you'll commit arson murder. I'll do what I need to do to maintain order. That's how this works. I protect this neighborhood, and in return, people pay me and do what I say. You broke the rules. Now you pay the price. Every word was being recorded, every threat, every admission. Marlowe forced herself to keep going. What about all the other people you've been collecting from? What do they think about you threatening to kill a single mother and her kid? They think the same thing everyone thinks. Better you than them. Dalton stood. You've got 48 hours. Sell, leave, or burn. Your choice. He turned toward the door. Wait. Dalton looked back. Why do you do this, really? Is it just money? For a moment, something flickered in Dalton's eyes. Something almost human. It's respect, control, the knowledge that when I walk into a room, people know who's in charge. He paused. My father ran protection in this neighborhood for 20 years before me. He taught me that fear is currency. And currency when powered. Your father sounds like he was a terrible person. Dalton's expression went cold. My father was a king, and I'm his heir. Remember that. He walked out. The sedan pulled away. Marlowe's legs gave out. She sat heavily on a stool, hands shaking. Gideon was beside her in seconds. You okay? Did you hear all that? Every word? So did the FBI. As if on cue, 2 black SUVs screeched up outside. Agents poured out tactical vests, weapons drawn. But Dalton was already gone. Vance entered the diner radio to his ear. All units suspect is eastbound on Highway 99 in a black sedan license plate, Charlie 794 Delta Mike. Intercept and detain. He turned to Marlowe. You did perfect, absolutely perfect. We got everything, extortion, racketeering, terroristic threats, conspiracy, enough to put him away for 20 years. You're arresting him. We're arresting him right now, and Vance smiled. You just took down Dalton Crane. Marlowe started shaking. Not from fear this time, from relief, from exhaustion, from the bone-deep knowledge that she'd done something impossible. Sutton wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You were amazing. I was terrified. Same thing, Gideon said quietly. 20 minutes later, Vance's radio crackled. Suspect in custody. No resistance. Marlowe closed her eyes. It was over. Except it wasn't, because even as federal agents led Dalton Crane away in handcuffs, even as Vance assured her she'd done the right thing, even as Gideon and Sutton celebrated her courage, Marlowe looked around her diner, at the plywood windows, the broken furniture, the damage that would cost thousands to repair, at the life she'd barely been surviving before now shattered completely. Agent Vance seemed to read her mind. There are victim assistance programs, funds for people targeted by criminals. We can help you apply. How long does that take? Few weeks, maybe a month. A month without windows, without customers, without income. Marlowe nodded numbly. After the agents left, after the scene cleared, after the adrenaline finally wore off completely, Gideon sat across from her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I won. I took down the man who's been terrorizing me for 2 years. I got justice. But justice doesn't pay for new windows, doesn't replace broken furniture, doesn't keep the lights on while I wait for victim assistance that might not come. Gideon was quiet. Then he said, how much? How much what? How much to fix everything? Really fix it. New windows, new furniture, new equipment. Make this place what it should be instead of what it's been. Marlo did the math in her head. 40,000, maybe more. The club will cover it. No. Marlo, no, when her voice was firm. I appreciate it more than you know, but I can't take charity. It's not charity, it is charity. And if I take it, I haven't won anything. I've just traded one man controlling my life for a different group controlling it. Gideon's jaw tightened. We're not Dalton Crane. I know you're not, but I need to do this myself. I need to own this victory, not have it handed to me. Then what do you want? Marlo took a breath, made a decision that felt almost as scary as wearing the wire. A loan, $40,000, $500 a month payments for 84 months. We draw up a contract, official, legal. I pay you back every cent plus reasonable interest. You don't have to. Yes, I do, for me, for Finn. I need him to see that victories are earned, that dignity matters more than easy money, that we rebuild with our own hands. She met Gideon's eyes. Will you loan me the money as a business transaction? Nothing more. Gideon looked at her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Deal, but we work alongside you. Partners, not bosses. Marlo shook his hand. Her grip was firm. Partners. That night, Marlo tucked Finn into bed safe and whole and blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to losing everything. Mom, did we win? Yeah, baby, we won. So no more bad men, no more Dalton. But there might be other challenges, other hard things. Life's like that sometimes. But we'll face them together. Marlo kissed his forehead. Always together. She turned off the light, walked back into the main diner. Sutton was waiting. Gideon told me about the loan. That was smart, taking it on your terms. I hope so. 7 years is a long time to owe money. 7 years is nothing compared to a lifetime of regret. Sutton handed her a folder. Building supply contacts, electricians, plumbers, people who won't price gouge you. We start tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow I want to sleep for 12 hours. Then Wednesday. But Marlo, you should be proud. You did something today that most people couldn't do. You stood up to a monster and you won. Marlo looked around the destroyed diner, at the plywood and the broken tables and the shattered pieces of her life. Then why doesn't it feel like winning? Because the hard part's not the fight, it's what comes after. Rebuilding, moving forward, learning to live without fear. Sutton headed for the door. But you'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think. After she left, Marlo sat alone in the dark, exhausted beyond measure. She'd won. Dalton was in custody. The FBI had their case. Justice was coming. But the diner was still broken. Money was still tight. The future was still uncertain. And in 2 days, when word spread that she'd helped put Dalton Crane behind bars, half the neighborhood would call her a hero. The other half would call her a rat. Customers would stay away. Business would suffer. The rebuild would be harder than she imagined. But she'd face it, because she wasn't alone anymore. Because Finn was watching. And because standing up, even when it cost everything, was still better than staying down. Week 1 after Dalton's arrest felt like living underwater. Everything moved slowly, distorted, muffled by exhaustion and shock, and the strange, hollow feeling that came from surviving something you thought would destroy you. Marlo stood in her diner at 6 in the morning on Wednesday, staring at the plywood covering her windows. Gideon had promised the club would help rebuild, had already transferred $40,000 into her account with a signed contract that made it official legal binding. A loan, not charity. The distinction mattered more than Marlo could explain. Sutton arrived at 6:30 with coffee and a notebook full of contractor contacts. Hank's crew is coming at 8. They'll pull the plywood measure for new windows, give us a quote. Should have glass installed by Friday if we're lucky. That fast? That's what happens when you stop negotiating with criminals and start working with people who actually give a damn. Sutton sat at the counter, flipped through her notes. Hank knows a guy for the electrical. Gideon's got to actually get a carpenter who owes him a favor. We can have this place operational in 3 weeks if we push. 3 weeks without income. You've got 40,000 in the bank and no extortion payments. You can survive 3 weeks. Marlowe wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could still go wrong. But Sutton was right. For the first time in 2 years, money wasn't the immediate crisis. The crisis was figuring out how to rebuild something better than what had been broken. At 8 o'clock, 5 men in work boots and tool belts arrived. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times, pulling plywood, sweeping glass, measuring, planning. Marlowe watched them work, feeling useless. "Don't just stand there," one of them called. The older man with the gray beard, Hank, the same angel who'd searched for evidence behind the dumpster. "You're the boss. Come tell us what you want." "What I want? Color of the paint, type of flooring, layout of the tables, this is your place. You get to decide." The concept felt foreign. For 2 years, every decision had been about survival, about making do, about choosing the cheapest option because cheap was all she could afford. Now someone was asking what she wanted. "I don't know," Marlowe admitted. Hank smiled. "Then let's figure it out together. What did you hate about this place before?" Marlowe looked around. Everything was old, broken, patched together. It felt like failure every time I walked in. "Okay, so we make it feel like success. Fresh, clean, yours." Hank pulled out paint swatches. "Pick a color that makes you happy." Marlowe stared at the swatches. Dozens of shades, blues and greens and warm neutrals. Her hand went to a soft sage green, the color of hope somehow. "That one." "Good choice. Now flooring." They spent the next hour making decisions, each one small, each one hers. By noon, the diner had been gutted, old flooring ripped up, damaged drywall removed, everything stripped down to studs and concrete. It looked worse than when Dalton's brick had shattered the windows, but it felt different. It felt like a beginning. Finn came home from school at 3:30, escorted by Sutton on her motorcycle. The boy's eyes went wide when he saw the destruction. "Mom, what happened?" "We're rebuilding, baby, making it better." "It looks worse." "Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better." Marlowe knelt down to his level. "But I need your help. Can you do something for me?" "What?" "Draw me a picture of what you think the perfect diner looks like. Whatever you imagine. I want to see it." Finn's face lit up. He grabbed paper and crayons, settled into a corner, away from the construction, started drawing with intense concentration. Marlowe watched him, feeling her chest tighten with something that might have been pride, or might have been love, or might have been the fierce determination not to let him down. At 5 o'clock, the work crew packed up. Hank approached with a clipboard. "We'll be back tomorrow, 7 sharp. We're on a tight timeline, but it's doable." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're serving breakfast in a place that doesn't leak and doesn't smell like defeat." After they left, Gideon arrived. He surveyed the gutted space without comment. "You okay?" he finally asked. "I think so. It's overwhelming. Rebuilding always is." He picked up a piece of broken tile, turned it over in his hands. "You know what you're doing tomorrow. Watching construction, learning construction. Hank's going to teach you basic electrical work. Sutton's going to show you plumbing. You're going to help with every part of this rebuild." "I don't know how to do any of that." "You didn't know how to take down a criminal organization either. You learned." Gideon set down the tile. "This is your diner, Marlowe. You should know every inch of it, how it works, how to fix it, so you're never dependent on someone else to keep it running. That's going to take time. We've got 3 weeks. You'd be surprised what you can learn when you're motivated." The next morning, Marlowe arrived at 6 with coffee and the kind of nervous energy that came from not knowing what to expect. Hank handed her a tool belt. "Put this on. Today you're learning electrical basics." For the next 8 hours, Marlowe learned things she'd never imagined needing to know. How to wire a light switch, how to install an outlet, how to read circuit diagrams, how to use tools whose names she'd never heard before. Her hands got dirty, her back ached. She made mistakes, got frustrated, wanted to quit a dozen times. But Hank was patient. "Electrical work is about 2 things," he said. Attention to detail and respect for the power you're working with. You've got both. You just need practice. By the end of the day, Marlo had successfully wired an entire section of the diner herself. It wasn't pretty, but it worked, and that felt like victory. Friday brought new windows, huge panes of glass that let light flood the space in a way the old grimy windows never had. Marlo stood in the center of the diner, surrounded by sawdust and paint cans and the controlled chaos of reconstruction, and felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just repair work. This was transformation. At noon, a young man walked through the open door, 17, maybe 18, thin, angry-looking, familiar in a way that made Marlo's stomach clench. She recognized the eyes. Dalton Crane's eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. "You're Marlo Brennan." "I am. I'm Wyatt Crane. Dalton's my father." The construction noise seemed to fade. Everyone had stopped working watching this confrontation unfold. Marlo set down her paint roller, faced him directly. "I'm sorry about your father, and sorry you got him arrested. Sorry you're dealing with the consequences of his choices." Wyatt's jaw clenched. "He said you were a snitch, that you ruined everything." "I testified against a man who threatened to burn me and my son alive. If that's ruining everything, then yes, I'm guilty. You don't know what it's like. Everyone looking at me like I'm him, like I'm going to end up just like him." "You're right, I don't know what that's like." Marlo crossed her arms. "But I know what it's like to be judged for things outside your control, to have people assume the worst, to feel trapped by circumstances." "Then why did you do it? Why destroy my family?" "Your father destroyed his own family when he chose to hurt people. I just made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else." Wyatt's face crumpled. For a second, the anger fell away, and what was underneath was just a scared kid. "I don't have anywhere to go. Mom died 3 years ago. Dad's assets are frozen. I've been staying with a friend, but his parents kicked me out because of who my father is." "How long since you've eaten?" The question seemed to surprise him. 2 days, maybe 3. Marlo walked to the small fridge in the corner, pulled out a sandwich she'd packed for lunch, handed it to Wyatt. "Eat." He stared at the sandwich like it might be a trap. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Because you're not your father, and I'm not the kind of person who punishes kids for their parents' crimes." Wyatt took the sandwich, ate it in 4 desperate bites. Marlo made a decision, the kind that was probably stupid, the kind that Gideon would question, the kind that felt right anyway. "You got a place to stay tonight?" "No." "You want a job?" Wyatt's eyes widened. "What?" "I need help. Cleaning up construction debris, prepping walls for paint, basic labor. I pay minimum wage. Cash daily until I get payroll set up properly." "You want to hire me after what my dad did to you?" "I want to give you a chance to be someone other than Dalton Crane's son. What you do with that chance is up to you." Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Why?" "Because someone gave me a chance once when I was drowning. Because breaking the cycle of violence starts with small acts of kindness. Because you look like you need help, and I'm in a position to offer it." Marlo paused. "And because my 8-year-old son is watching, and I want him to learn that forgiveness is stronger than revenge." Wyatt looked around at the construction crew, at Gideon and Sutton, watching from the corner at the half-rebuilt diner. "What if I mess up? Then we figure it out together. That's how this works." "When do I start?" "Right now. Grab that broom. Start sweeping the sawdust into piles." Wyatt grabbed the broom, and just like that, Marlo added one more person to the growing list of people who were rebuilding their lives in this diner. That evening, after the crew had left and Wyatt had swept every inch of the floor twice, Marlo found Gideon waiting outside. "You hired Dalton Crane's son." "I did." "That's either incredibly compassionate or incredibly reckless." "You've said that before, about other decisions I've made. And I was right then too." Gideon leaned against his bike. "What if he's reporting back to his father? What if he's here to sabotage the rebuild?" "He's not. I saw his face. That kid is terrified and alone and desperate not to become his father." "You can't save everyone, Marlo." "I'm not trying to save everyone, just the ones who show up asking for help." She met his eyes. "You saved me. Sutton taught me to fight. Hank's teaching me to rebuild. Now I'm passing it forward. That's how this works, right? The code. Gideon was quiet. Then he smiled that small smile that meant approval. Yeah, that's the code. 3 weeks later, the diner reopened. New windows that sparkled in the morning sun. Fresh sage green paint that made the whole space feel clean and hopeful. New flooring that didn't creak or crack. New tables and chairs sturdy and matching. New equipment in the kitchen that actually worked on all burners. It looked like a different place. It was a different place. Marlowe stood outside at 5:30 in the morning, staring at the sign Gideon had insisted on installing. Marlowe's Junction Diner, where courage finds home. She'd argued against it, said it was too sentimental, too obvious. But Finn had loved it, and in the end, that's what mattered. At 6 o'clock, Marlowe unlocked the doors. A line had formed outside, 20 people waiting for breakfast. Some were old regulars who'd stayed away during the Dalton years. Some were new, curious about the diner that had taken down a criminal. Some were angels there to support. All of them here customers. Marlowe served them with Wyatt's help. The kid had turned out to be a natural at customer service, friendly and efficient in a way that surprised them both. By 8 o'clock, every table was full. By noon, Marlowe had served more customers than she had in any single week during Dalton's reign. The money in the register felt like validation, like proof that doing the right thing could actually lead to success instead of destruction. That night, she made her first loan payment to Gideon, $500, cash, with 83 months to go. You don't have to pay me back this fast, Gideon said. Take your time. The contract says monthly payments. I honor contracts. He smiled. I know you do. That's why I'm not worried about the money. The weeks turned into months. Marlowe fell into a rhythm. Early mornings prepping food. Breakfast rush serving truckers and locals. Lunch crowd of construction workers and business people. Afternoon lull for prep work and inventory. Dinner service. Close at 8. Clean. Count the register. Go home to Finn. Repeat. It was exhausting, but it was hers. Wyatt proved himself over and over. Showed up early, stayed late, never complained, slowly transformed from angry and defensive to hopeful and engaged. One day, 3 months in, he asked Marlowe about his father. Have you heard anything about the trial? Detective Holloway keeps me updated. Your father's looking at 15 years, maybe more. Wyatt nodded slowly. Good. Good. He hurt people. He needs to face consequences. Wyatt's voice was quiet. I found his ledgers, every business he extorted, every person he threatened, pages and pages of crimes. What did you do with them? Gave them to the FBI. Agent Vance said it helped seal the case. He looked at Marlowe. Does that make me a bad son? It makes you a good person. There's a difference. He's going to hate me. Probably, but his hate says more about him than it does about you. Wyatt was quiet for a moment. Then he said, thank you for giving me a chance, for not treating me like I'm him. You're not him. You're better. And you're going to keep being better. 6 months after Dalton's arrest on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, 8 motorcycles pulled up outside the diner. Not Hell's Angels. Different patches, different colors, Devil's Riders. The rival club Gideon had mentioned once or twice. The ones who operated on the eastern edge of Bakersfield. Marlowe's stomach clenched. She glanced at Wyatt. Go in the back. Now. But now, Wyatt went. The bikers entered. 8 men, all wearing leather vests with a skull and pitchfork patch. Leading them was a man in his mid-40s, thick beard scar across his knuckles. This was Snake Garrett, the Devil's Riders president. Marlowe stood behind the counter, hands steady despite her racing heart. Can I help you? Garrett looked around the diner, taking it in. The fresh paint, the full tables, the success. Heard this place was under Angel's protection. It's under my protection. The Angels are friends. Friends, Garrett smiled. Not friendly, testing. That's an interesting word. It's an accurate word. See, here's the thing. This used to be Crane territory. Now Crane's gone. That makes it open territory. And my crew's been thinking about expanding west. Marlowe's jaw tightened. This diner doesn't belong to any territory. It belongs to me. Everything belongs to someone, sweetheart. Don't call me sweetheart. Garrett's eyebrows rose. You got spine. I like that. I don't care what you like. Here's how this works. You're welcome in my diner if you follow the rules. No violence, no drugs, no intimidation. Pay your tab. Treat people with respect. Can you do that? And if we can't, then you leave and you don't come back. One of Garrett's men laughed. You threatening us? I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Garrett studied her face. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. For real this time. Gideon said you had guts. Didn't believe him until now. He pulled out a chair, sat. We'll take coffee and whatever's good for lunch. Marlo hesitated, then moved to pour coffee. Why are you really here? She asked as she set mugs on the table. Curiosity. Wanted to see the woman who took down Dalton Crane. Wanted to know if you were real or if Gideon was exaggerating. And you're real. That's rare. Garrett wrapped his hands around the mug. You know what's going to happen now, right? With Crane gone, other people are going to try to fill the vacuum. Some of them are going to come after you because you're a symbol. A symbol of what? Resistance. The idea that normal people can fight back and win. That's dangerous to men who rely on fear. Are you one of those men? I was. Long time ago. Garrett took a sip of coffee. But I got tired of being the monster. Started wondering if there was another way. What other way? Respect instead of fear. Partnership instead of extortion. Protection that's actually protection, not just a racket. He looked around the diner. Place like this could be good for business. Neutral ground. Somewhere different crews can eat without worrying about territory wars. Marlo's mind raced. This was either a genuine offer or an elaborate setup. What do you want in exchange? Nothing, just acknowledgement that Devil's Riders are welcome here same as angels. That we get the same respect, the same rules. No special treatment. No special treatment. Marlo made a decision, extended her hand. Then you're welcome, same as anyone else. Garrett shook her hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Your kid, he said, the one who warned Gideon. He around, he's at school. He's got guts, reminds me of my daughter at that age. Brave and stupid in equal measure. Garrett stood. Tell him Snake says respect. He earned it. I will. The Devil's Rider stayed for lunch, ordered burgers and fries, paid their tab plus a generous tip. Left without incident. After they were gone, Gideon called. Heard you had visitors. You have people watching my diner. I have people watching out for you. There's a difference. His voice was warm. Heard you negotiated peace with Garrett. I set boundaries. He respected them. That's not nothing. Devil's Riders don't respect many people. Maybe they're tired of fighting too. Maybe, or maybe you've got a gift for seeing the human in people everyone else writes off as monsters. Is that a compliment? It's an observation, and yeah, a compliment. And that night, Marlo tucked Finn into bed in their new apartment. Not the room behind the diner anymore. An actual apartment 3 blocks away. 2 bedrooms. A bathroom that didn't leak. A kitchen with a full-size refrigerator. Paid for with diner profits. Earned money. Clean money. Finn was 9 now, taller, his face losing some of that little kid softness. But his smile was the same. Mom, his voice was sleepy. Are we safe now? Yeah, baby, we're safe. Forever. Nothing's forever, but for now we're okay, and that's enough. 1 year after the brick through the window, Marlo stood in her diner surrounded by people. Customers, friends, Hell's Angels, Devil's Riders, Detective Holloway, Agent Vance, Mr. Patterson, Hank and his construction crew, Wyatt, and Finn dressed in his best clothes grinning from ear to ear. They'd gathered for the anniversary celebration. 1 year of Marlo's Junction Diner operating free from extortion, free from fear. 1 year of success. Marlo climbed onto a chair so everyone could see her. The room quieted. A year ago, I was terrified. I'd spent 2 years paying protection money to a man who terrorized this neighborhood. I'd accepted fear as a permanent condition. And then my 8-year-old son did something incredibly brave. He warned a stranger about danger, not knowing what it would cost us. She looked at Finn, who blushed but smiled. That moment changed everything. Not because it was easy, not because it solved all our problems, but because it taught me something important. It taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest change. Marlo paused, emotion tightening her throat. I couldn't have done any of this alone, Abao. Gideon and the Hells Angels taught me to fight and helped me rebuild. Sutton showed me that strength comes in many forms. Detective Holloway and Agent Vance believed me when I needed someone to listen. Hank taught me skills I never thought I'd need. Wyatt showed me that redemption is possible and forgiveness is powerful. And all of you, by coming here, by supporting this place, showed me that community matters more than anything. She held up a small leather vest, child-sized, custom-made. This is for Finn, an honorary vest from the Hells Angels. Not because he's a biker, because he's a guardian, someone who sees danger and acts, someone who protects others even when it costs him something. Gideon stepped forward, took the vest. Finn approached, eyes wide. Gideon knelt down. Finn Brennan, you saved my life. You showed courage when grown men would have stayed silent. You deserve this. He held up the vest. On the back, a custom patch. A guardian angel with motorcycle wings. Text underneath, the kid who saved a life. Honorary Hells Angels. Finn's eyes filled with tears as Gideon helped him into the vest. The room erupted in applause. Marlo climbed down from the chair, pulled her son close. Finn buried his face in her shoulder, overwhelmed. You did good, baby, she whispered. So good. After the applause died down, Marlo cleared her throat. One more thing, I have an announcement. The room quieted again. This past year has been the most profitable year this diner has ever had, and I've been making my loan payments to Gideon every single month. $500. On time. Every time. She pulled out an envelope, handed it to Gideon. This month's payment. Month 12 of 84. Only 72 more to go. The room laughed. Gideon smiled. And with the success of this diner, Marlo continued, with the support of this community, I've been able to do something I never thought possible. I'm opening a second location. Gasps, excited murmurs. The new diner will be on the east side, same concept. Good food, fair prices, safe space. But with a specific mission. I'm hiring people who are rebuilding their lives. People who need a chance and a paycheck in a place that doesn't judge them for their past. She looked at Wyatt, who was wiping tears from his eyes. Wyatt Crane is going to manage it. He's earned this through hard work, dedication, and choosing every day to be better than his circumstances. Wyatt stood looking shocked. Marlo, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes, God, yes, thank you. The celebration continued for hours. Food and laughter and stories and the kind of joy that comes from surviving impossible things together. As the crowd thinned, Marlo found herself standing outside under the stars, finally quiet. Gideon joined her. You did it, he said quietly. Everything you set out to do. Freedom, success, justice, community. We did it, Marlo corrected. I couldn't have done any of this alone. No, but you led. That matters. They stood in comfortable silence. What's next? Gideon asked. Next, I figure out how to run 2 diners without losing my mind. Next, I make sure Wyatt succeeds. Next, I keep showing up for Finn and for every person who walks through those doors needing help. That's a lot of next. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's mine. And I've learned something this year. What's that? Responsibility isn't a burden when it comes from choice. When you choose to stand up, when you choose to help, when you choose to fight for something that matters, it changes everything. Gideon smiled. You've changed. From the terrified woman counting coins in a register to this. I haven't changed. I've just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. The door opened. A woman stepped out. Young, maybe 25. Bruise fading on her left cheek. A little girl clutching her hand, maybe 6 years old. They looked lost, frightened. Marlo recognized that look. She'd worn it for 2 years. She walked over to them. Can I help you? The woman's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry to bother you. I saw the lights, heard there was a celebration. I just needed somewhere safe to sit for a minute. What's your name? Jade. This is my daughter, Emma. Hi, Jade. Hi, Emma. I'm Marlo. This is my diner. I can't afford to eat here. I just needed to rest. We've been walking for hours. Marlo looked at the bruise, at the fear in the woman's eyes, at the little girl trying so hard to be brave. Come inside, let's get you both some food. No charge. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's community, and you're a part of it now, whether you know it or not. Marlo held the door open. Come on, you're safe here. Jade hesitated, then stepped inside. Marlo seated them at a booth, brought water and menus. Finn came over sensing a kid who needed a friend. I'm Finn. Do you want to see my vest? I'm an honorary Hell's Angel. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really? I saved someone's life. It was scary, but I did it anyway. The two kids started talking. Jade watched them, tears streaming down her face. What happened? Marlo asked gently, sitting across from her. My boyfriend. I finally left. But I don't have anywhere to go. No money, no job, just Emma and whatever I could grab in 5 minutes. Marlo knew this story, had lived variations of it, had seen it play out in a dozen different forms. Do you need a place to stay? I need everything, but I can't ask for help. I got myself into this. Stop. Whatever you're about to say, stop. Marlo's voice was firm but kind. You didn't get yourself into anything. Someone hurt you. That's not your fault. And asking for help isn't weakness. It's survival. She pulled out her phone, dialed. Sutton. It's Marlo. I've got someone who needs the shelter. Can you send someone to pick her up? Pause. Thank you. She hung up, looked at Jade. Hell's Angels run a women's shelter on the east side. Safe house, resources, counseling. They'll protect you while you figure out next steps. I can't go to a biker shelter. I thought the same thing a year ago. Turns out bikers can be the safest people you'll ever meet. At least these bikers. Marlo paused. And when you're ready, when you've had time to heal and plan, I'm opening a second diner. I'll need staff. People who understand what it's like to rebuild from nothing. People who know how hard it is to start over. Jade stared at her. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance. What you do with it is up to you. Why, you don't know me? Marlo smiled. A year ago, my son whispered a warning to a stranger. That stranger helped me find my courage. That courage led to this. She gestured around the diner. Now it's my turn to help someone else. That's how this works. We save each other. Jade broke down crying. Marlo reached across the table, held her hand. You're not alone anymore. You hear me? You're not alone. A motorcycle pulled up outside. Sutton walked in, saw Jade, understood immediately. Ready to go somewhere safe. Jade looked at Emma, who was laughing with Finn over some joke only kids understood. Yeah, we're ready. Sutton helped them gather their things. As they walked to the door, Jade turned back. Thank you. I don't know how to repay. Pay it forward, Marlo said. When you're strong again, when you're standing on solid ground, help the next person who needs it. That's the only payment I need. After they left, Marlo stood in her diner surrounded by the remnants of celebration. Plates to wash, chairs to straighten, a normal night's work. But it didn't feel normal. It felt like purpose. Gideon was still there watching from the corner. You're going to save everyone who walks through that door, aren't you? I'm going to try, or at least give them the tools to save themselves. That's a heavy burden. It's not a burden, it's a legacy. Marlo started collecting dishes. My son whispered 6 words that changed everything. Drive away. It's a trap. Those words saved a life. But they did more than that. They showed me that one moment of courage can ripple outward forever. She paused, looked at Gideon. That's what I want this place to be. Not just a diner, a place where courage ripples, where people find the strength to warn each other, to stand up to help, where everyone who walks through that door knows they matter. You've built something special here. We've built something special, all of us together. Finn ran over, still wearing his vest, practically glowing with pride. Mom, can Emma come visit sometime? I want to show her my drawings. Sure, baby. When she's settled, we'll arrange it. And Mom, thank you for helping her, for helping everyone. Marlo knelt down, pulled him close. You taught me how. Remember, you showed me what being brave looks like. That night, after the dishes were done and the diner was locked, and Finn was asleep in his bed in their apartment, with the bedroom that was his and the bathroom that didn't leak, Marlo sat on her couch with a cup of tea. She thought about the past year, about terror and courage, about destruction and rebuilding, about the woman who'd counted $47 with shaking hands and the woman she'd become. They were the same person, but also completely different. She thought about Dalton Crane serving 15 years in federal prison, about Wyatt, who'd turned his father's legacy of violence into a future of service, about Jade and Emma, who'd walked into her diner broken and would walk out whole. She thought about Gideon and Sutton and the Hells Angels, who taught her that family wasn't about blood. It was about showing up, about standing together, about protecting each other. She thought about Finn, now 9 years old, asleep with his honorary vest hung carefully on the back of his door, about the man he'd become someday, about the lessons he was learning not from words, but from watching his mother choose strength over surrender day after day after day. And she thought about tomorrow, about the second diner she'd open in 6 months, about the lives that would be rebuilt there, about the next person who'd walk through her door needing help and finding it, about the ripples. Marlo finished her tea, turned off the lights, went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new customers, new opportunities to choose standing up over staying down. But tonight she slept deeply and without fear, because she'd learned something this year that changed everything. The world didn't belong to men like Dalton Crane. It belonged to people who whispered warnings, who fought back, who rebuilt, who helped each other rise. It belonged to 8-year-old boys who saw danger and acted. It belonged to mothers who chose courage. It belonged to communities that protected their own. And in Marlowe's Junction Diner on the edge of Bakersfield, where the highway met hope that truth lived every single day, in the sage green walls and the strong tables and the windows that let light flood in the vest hanging in a 9-year-old boy's bedroom, in the loan being paid month by month in the second location opening, in every person who walked through those doors and found not just food but sanctuary. One whisper had changed everything. Drive away, it's a trap. But the real trap had been the life Marlo was living, small, scared, surviving. Her son had freed her from that, and now every single day she freed someone else. That was legacy. That was home. That was the ripple that never stopped spreading.